NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition, and the key word is traditional. Throughout the 20th century, as Kung Fu was standardized, many styles lost their essence. In contemporary wushu, the emphasis is on competition. There are standard moves pushed to the max to impress the judges, and the philosophical side is ignored. This is a far cry from what those great masters of the past taught. In traditional arts, each style has its own criteria for good technique. While some moves still do look flashy, the emphasis is on practicality, and each system works in a different way. At NTD's competition, judges grade contestants not only on their physical ability, but also on how they stick true to the essence of their style, their respect for the art, the tradition, and other contestants. So join us on a journey to the roots of Kung Fu at the 7th NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition.
Good morning and welcome everyone to NTD's Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition.
各位选手、各位来宾、各位观众朋友，大家好！新唐人第7届全世界中华传统武术大赛决赛马上开始。
NTD's mission is to revive traditional Chinese culture. Today we hope to display the essence of traditional Chinese martial arts, as well as its values and its virtues.
本大赛旨在继承和发扬传统武术精神，弘扬武德，复兴中华传统文化。感谢各位对大赛的支持。
Today is NTD's 7th International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition. We have already held our preliminary rounds in both North America as well as Asia Pacific. We've also held our semifinal round yesterday. Today is our final round.
本次大赛是新唐人举办的第7届全世界中华传统武术大赛。亚太区和北美区的初赛入围选手已经在昨天进行了复赛，今天将进行决赛。
Let's first introduce our judges.
现在为大家介绍今天的评委。
With our head judge being Mr. Youfu Li.
评委主席总裁判李有甫先生。
Our next judge, Mr. Long Fei Yang.
评委杨龙飞先生。
Our next judge, Mr. Jianmin Huang.
评委黄坚敏先生。
Our next judge, Mr. Zheng Li.
评委李军先生。
And our last judge, Mr. Jae Hong Zong.
评委曾介宏先生。
Today we have 48 competitors that have made it into the final rounds. We want to wish them nothing but a great success.
一共有48位选手进入决赛，我们预祝所有选手都有绝佳表现。
We will now invite NTD's CEO, Mr. John Tang, to come up to do the ceremonial striking of the gong.
我们现在鸣锣开赛，有请新唐人总裁唐中为我们鸣锣。
We will now have our competition begin.
大赛现在开始。
The International Traditional Chinese
We'll now
Martial
begin
Arts
with our
Competition.
junior unarmed division, with our first
I will be your
competitor this
commentator, Ben
morning
Hedges, and
being
we're just about to kick off
competitor
the
C27
junior
from
finals.
Taiwan,
First
Wen
contestant
Sheng
is
Sai,
Cai
performing a
Wenxiang
Baji
from Taiwan.
Chuan big form.
现在进行少年拳术组比赛，第一位是 C27 选手，来自台湾的蔡文祥，套路名称大八极拳。
Performing the Baji Quan. Baji Quan in English is called 8 Extremities Fist. It's known for its elbow and shoulder techniques. is one of China's internal styles of kung fu and features explosive power. The full name of this art is Kaimen Baji Quan, or Opening the Gate Baji Quan. And the name Baji actually comes from the Chinese I Ching, or Taoist classic, meaning extension in all directions, which is often used to give the idea of everything in the universe. And that was contestant Cai Wenxiang from Taiwan in the junior open hand division.
Our next competitor, number C28 from Taiwan, Wenmin Tsai, performing a Baji continuous form.
下一位是 C28 选手，来自台湾的蔡文敏，套路名称八级连环拳。
This is Cai Wenmin, also from Taiwan, doing another Baji Quan continuous form. You can see that downward striking hand, which is a characteristic of this style. Baji Quan opens an opponent's arms forcibly, hence the name Kaimen, or opening the gate Baji Quan, which we talked about during the last contestant, and then attacks at mid, high, and low ranges. That was contestant Cai Wenmin from Taiwan with a Baji continuous form.
Our next competitor, number C26 from Colombia, Armalali Pinzan, performing a Batha Chuan form.
下一位是 C26 选手，来自哥伦比亚的 Armalali Pinzan， 套路名称八法拳。
So this is one of our contestants from Colombia who is performing the Ba Fa Quan, or 8 methods fists. It is a 64 move form. The Ba Fa Quan 8 methods fist is a style that originated around 100 years ago, around the time of the Xinhai Revolution in China, the Republican period. And it's actually a combination of several traditional styles: Fanzi Quan, Hao Chui, Tan Tui, Tong Bei, and Xing Yi Quan. You'll see some movements, some Pigua movements in there as well, and leg work reminiscent of Xing Yi Quan. And it combines 8 techniques, or 8 methods, hence the name Ba Fa Quan, which means 8 methods fist. This style comes from the regions of Shanxi province and also Inner Mongolia in China. That was contestant Armalali Pinzan, all the way from Colombia.
Our next competitor, C13 from the United States, Brian Uriel Mocha, performing a Bhagwa Chuan form.
下一位是 C13选手，来自美国的 Brian Uriel Mocha， 套路名称八法拳。
So this is contestant Brian Uriel Mocha from New York, USA, also performing the Ba Fa Quan or 8 Methods Fist. And in this style, the 8 methods refer to outer trap, inner trap, and stab, flick, support, shake, chop, and reel. It's an English translation of 8 Chinese words. Perhaps not 100% accurate, but you'll see a variety of different grabbing, stabbing, flicking, shaking methods in this form. Open palm, fist, and elbow techniques are all present. And like we said, it is 64 movements long. It's actually quite a challenging form for a contestant to do, testing physical fitness and mental coordination and memory of such a long sequence of movements. This style also features some weapons training as well. The spear, the broadsword, and the straight sword. And there is a spear technique called the 8 Methods Spear. It's also part of the system. That was contestant Brian Uriel Mocha from the USA.
Our next competitor, number C35 from the United States, Shaktimina Meenakshi Sundaram, performing a Shaolin Chen form.
下一位是 C35选手，来自美国的 Shaktimina Meenakshi Sundaram， 套路名称少林拳。
So this is a Shaolin form called Shaolin Quan or Shaolin Fist from Shaolin Kung Fu, which is the most famous form of Chinese martial arts, originating in the Shaolin Temple. Shaolin Kung Fu was traditionally practiced by Buddhist monks of the Shaolin Temple throughout history in China. And many external martial arts actually derived from this style. So you could say Shaolin Kung Fu is kind of the grandfather of Chinese martial arts. And even Japanese martial arts, because many martial artists who traveled from Japan to China brought back what they'd learned from Shaolin-derived styles, and it evolved into karate and taekwondo in Korea, etc. So it is kind of like the root of all external kung fu styles.
And our last competitor in our junior unarmed division, competitor C29 from Taiwan, Pingju Chen, performing an Arlu long fist form.
少年拳术组最后一位是 C29选手，来自台湾的陈炳如，套路名称二路长拳。
So this is contestant Chen Pingju, also from Taiwan, performing a long fist style form called 二路长拳 or two-road long fist. Long fist is a northern style of Chinese kung fu, known for its low, wide, and elongated stances, and long-range kicking techniques. It's a bit more acrobatic than many of the southern styles. Still considered an external martial art. Long fist styles are known for their acrobatic kicks, but do have a balance of hand techniques as well. And that concludes the junior unarmed division. We'll have the female
and our
unarmed
next division, the female unarmed division. Our first competitor B15 from the United States, Jennifer Bui, performing a snake form.
下面进行女子拳术组比赛，第一位上场的是 B15选手，来自美国的 Jennifer Bui， 套路名称蛇形拳。
So this is Jennifer Bui from the USA. She is doing a snake fist form. And the snake fist is one of the 5 animal styles of Chinese Kung Fu, which features a open hand, primarily open hand technique, mimicking the movements of a snake. In addition to the hand movements, you can also see the general movement of the body mimics the fluidity of the snake, which allows practitioners of this style to evade enemies and entwine their defenses. If you get really into looking into the background of the snake style, there are also different styles that actually imitate the movements of different types of snakes, including the python, viper, and cobra. So that was Jennifer Bui from the USA. Snake fist.
Our next competitor B21 from Taiwan, Yu Pei Wang, performing a Shaolin Yan Qing Chuan form.
下一位是 B21选手，来自台湾的王于佩，套路名称少林燕青拳。
Now this is Wang Yupei from Taiwan. We had the pleasure of interviewing her earlier, and she is doing a Shaolin Yanqing Quan form. She says she's been training in this style for about a year, but has been doing various Kung Fu styles for a lot longer than that. But with this particular master, or this particular Shifu, she's trained for about a year and decided to join the competition, has made it all the way through to the finals. Like we said, Shaolin is considered kind of the grandfather art for all of the Chinese external martial arts. These styles originated at the Shaolin Temple, practiced originally by monks. So that was Wang Yupei with Shaolin Yanqing Quan.
Our next competitor, B13 from the United States, Shelby Gill, performing an Arlu Pigua Chuan Qinglong Chuan form.
下一位是 B13选手，来自美国的 Shelby Gill， 套路名称披挂二路青龙拳。
So this is Shelby Gill with a Pigua form. Pigua is known as chop hanging fist or chop hanging palm. And as you can see, it has a big emphasis on palm techniques rather than closed fist techniques, with a lot of chopping movements. And this style is often practiced alongside Baji Quan, which we saw in the junior unarmed division. The power generation in Pigua comes from the accelerated force of the arms as they spin in those chopping techniques. As you can see, there's a lot of rotation of the arms in this style. A lot of chopping with both hands. So that was Shelby Gill, the USA.
Our next competitor B12 from China, Chunling Li, performing a Bhagwa 64 palm form.
下一位是 B12选手，来自中国的李春玲，套路名称八卦64掌。
So this is Li Chunling performing Bhagwa, 64 movement form. Bhagwa Zhang, or Bhagwa palm, the 8 trigrams palm, is known for its circle walking. If you observe closely, you can see that every time she walks is in a circular motion. A characteristic of this art is that it's always changing direction. All the moves are in a circular form. It also uses the palm rather than the fist, the open palm techniques. Hence the name is Bhagwa Zhang, Bhagwa palm rather than Bhagwa fist. And if you observe closely, you most probably will not see a closed fist at all in this form. Bhagwa is considered one of the 3 main internal martial arts of China: Bhagwa, Xingyi, and Taiji. Taiji, of course, or Tai Chi, is what a lot of people practice for health in parks. And the lesser known Bhagwa and Xingyi are also very powerful internal martial arts, but also incredible for one's health as well. Bhagwa is based on the theory of the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, the Taoist book. And that was 64 palm Bhagwa form. Li Chunlin from Taiwan. Excuse me, from China. Li Chunlin from
And
China.
our last competitor in our female unarmed division, competitor B11 from Canada, Katrina Audette, performing a stomping steps form.
女子拳术组最后一位是 B11选手，来自加拿大的 Katrina Audette， 套路名称崩步螳螂。
So this is Katrina Audette from Canada, performing Bongbu, or a stomping step form of the 7-star praying mantis style. And like we saw with the snake style, there are animal styles in Chinese Kung Fu that mimic the movements of animals. And this one from the 7-star praying mantis system, you can see that it mimics the movements of a praying mantis. You can see the hand form is very much like a praying mantis. But it's not just the movements or the appearance, but also the tactics of what a praying mantis would do in combat. And this style was developed through observing praying mantises fighting in China. So that was Katrina Audette with that stomping steps in the mantis form. And that concludes the female unarmed division. And next up will be the male unarmed division, where we have 12 contestants from the USA, Taiwan, Colombia, and Venezuela.
Now moving on to our male unarmed division with our first competitor A25 from Colombia, Sergio Torres, performing the Zui Chuan form.
下面进行男子拳术组比赛，第一位上场的是 A25 选手，来自哥伦比亚的 Sergio Torres， 套路名称醉拳。
So this is Sergio Torres performing Zui Quan, which translates as Drunken Fist. And this is a very famous style, made famous by the Kung Fu movie Drunken Master, made back in the late 70s with Jackie Chan. And the characteristics of this style is that the practitioner pretends they're drunk, or may even be drunk while they're practicing, and this serves to confuse the enemy, kind of faking weakness and then unleashing a very powerful attack. It's my understanding that Mr. Torres actually learned this form especially for this competition. He is a monk in a Taoist temple in in Colombia, so he is in incredibly good shape and decided to specifically learn this drunken form for this competition. And you can see a key component of this form is mimicking drunkenness and taking a sip from a cup, confusing your enemy, and then unleashing a powerful attack. And then falling asleep. Just kidding. And the movie Drunken Master was made in 1978. It's a great movie to watch if you want to learn more about this style and how it works. And a lot of the moves he's doing today are very similar to what you can see in the film. It's one of the classic Hong Kong martial arts movies, directed by Yuen Wu-ping, who also did some of the choreography for The Matrix and many other martial arts movies. And Drunken Fist is actually an incredibly physical form of Kung Fu because it has a lot of tumbling, a lot of techniques where the whole body slams down on the ground. So you do have to be in incredibly good shape to practice it. And as you can see, this form is very, very long. So it's actually incredible athletic ability that we're seeing here from Mr. Torres, all the way from Colombia. And he's sobered up. So that was Sergio Torres with Zui Quan, or Drunken Fist.
Our next competitor, A35 from Taiwan, Shen Yun Shop, performing a Baji continuous form.
下一位是 A35 选手，来自台湾的江心银，套路名称八级连环拳。
So this is Jiang Xinyin performing a Baji Quan continuous form, similar form to what we saw in the junior division. And if you've just joined us, Baji Quan, it is an internal martial art from China. It's known for its explosive power, elbow and shoulder techniques, and downward strikes. The full name of this art is actually Kaimen Baji Quan, which means opening the gate, 8 extremities fist. Part of its technique is forcibly opening up an opponent's guard and then attacking at high, mid, and low ranges. You'll see a lot of low strikes in addition to medium and high range strikes in this style. Bodyguard to the last emperor of China, Puyi, practiced this style. And that was Jiang Xinyin, Baji Quan continuous form.
Our next competitor, A36, also from Taiwan, Guanting Yao, performing a Meihua praying mantis fist form.
下一位是 A36 选手，来自台湾的姚冠廷，套路名称梅花螳螂摘要一段。
So this is Yao Guanting from Taiwan with a Meihua praying mantis form. So like we said, in the praying mantis style, you are imitating the movements and the tactics of a praying mantis in combat. You will see the praying mantis shaped fist, but also in this style, normal punches and open hand techniques as well. Style was supposedly created during the Song dynasty by a man called Wang Lang, who observed how aggressive a praying mantis was in combat. And that was Yao Guanting from Taiwan, Meihua praying mantis fist.
Our next competitor, A41 from the United States, Sichuan Liu, performing a Kaiji Chuan form.
下一位是 A41 选手，来自美国的刘子川，套路名称开吉拳。
And And this is Jack Liu from the USA performing a Kaiji Quan form. This is considered an internal art from China, although it is much more rare and less well known than other similar arts such as Baji Quan. And Jack's father is actually a master of this style, and he learned his kung fu from his father. So if you've just joined us on the stream, this is Jack Liu performing Kaiji Quan, an internal martial art from China. And you will see there are similarities between Baji Quan and this art, although this is a much rarer internal art that is much more seldom seen. So Jack Liu performing Kaiji Quan.
Our next competitor, 824, from Colombia, Jimmy Garcia, performing a Bhagwa Quan form.
下一位是 A24 选手，来自哥伦比亚的 Jimmy Garcia， 套路名称八法拳。
So this is another rendition of the Ba Fa Quan, or 8 methods fist form. And Mr. Garcia is all the way from Colombia. Like we said, this style is a combination of several different styles that originated around the turn of the century, 1900. It's a combination of Fanzi, Pao Chui, Tan Tui, Tongbei, and Xing Yi Quan. Xing Yi Quan, of course, is one of the internal martial arts. And you can also see movements from Pigua in there as well, those chopping movements that you just saw. It's called 8 methods fist because of its use of 8 different types of grabbing, striking, shaking, etc. 8 different methods in total, hence the name Ba Fa Quan, or 8 methods of fist. The style first appeared in 1906. It was actually practiced by the army in China. So that was Jimmy Garcia, Ba Fa Quan, 8 methods of fist.
Our next competitor, 845, from the United States, Timothy Freeman, performing a Mao Mian form.
下一位是 A45 选手，来自美国的 Timothy Freeman， 套路名称抹面拳、披挂拳。
So this is Timothy Freeman from the USA, and he's performing a form called Mao Mian, and this is actually part of the Pigua system. So you can see again those swinging and chopping Movements, remember, in Bhagwa, a lot of the power is generated by the swinging of the arms, the momentum of the arms. This style heavily emphasizes palm techniques, as you can see. It features explosive, long-range power. And it originated in Hebei province of northern China, although today you'll also find Bhagwa in Taiwan and many other places. It features more subtle hip movements compared to other styles such as Baji Quan, due to its emphasis on chopping rather than other techniques such as hammers, punches, elbows, which require more quick and powerful action. So that was Timothy Freeman.
Next competitor, 838 from Taiwan, Guo Zhichuang, performing a Baji Quan Tian Shan form.
下一位是 A38 选手，来自台湾的庄国志，套路名称八极拳天山。
So we have another Baji Quan form. Zhuang Guozhi from Taiwan. If you've just joined us, Baji Quan is translated as the 8 Extremities Fist. It's considered one of the internal martial arts of China, known for its powerful, explosive movements, especially elbow and shoulder techniques. And there are some similarities with Bhagwa, which we just saw, Timothy Freeman, the previous contestant. But you'll see in Baji Quan, there's a lot more explosive power, a lot more forceful rotation of the waist, because it relies more on punches, hammer, fists, rather than the chops of Bhagwa. So that was Zhuang Guozhi from Taiwan, a Baji Quan.
Our next competitor, 837 from Taiwan, Ta Yan Liu, performing a 5 hands fist form.
下一位是 A37 选手，来自台湾的刘大雁，套路名称五手拳。
So this is Liu Dayan from Taiwan. The name of this form is Wu Shou Quan, or 5 hands fist. Liu Dayan from Taiwan, performing 5 hands fist.
Our next competitor, 843 from China, Wei Cheng Zhao, performing a Baji Chuan small form.
下一位是 A43号选手，来自中国的赵月成，套路名称八级小架或是。
So this is Wei Chengqiao from China performing a Baji Chuan small form. And if you don't know, or if you just joined us, Baji Chuan, we have seen a few contestants performing this style. It is known as the 8 Extremities Fist in English. And it is one of the internal styles of China. Features powerful elbow and shoulder strikes. The feature of this style is that the fists are often held loosely and used to strike in a downward fashion, which you probably observed in that form. So that was Zhao Yucheng from China with a Baji Chuan small
Our
form.
next competitor, 821 from Venezuela, Daniel Hernandez, performing the Da Lohan form.
下一位是 A21选手，来自委内瑞拉的 Daniel Hernandez，套路名称大罗汉拳。
So this is Daniel Hernandez. He is from Venezuela. And he is performing the Luohan Quan, or R-hat fist. R-hat is a cultivation rank of an enlightened person below a Buddha, the famous Bodhidharma who traveled to the Shaolin temple, achieved the level of R-hat in his enlightenment. This is the oldest style that represents Shaolin Kung Fu. The 18 Luohan hands, which were moves that Bodhidharma taught the Shaolin monks after he came out of his 9 years of meditation, are known as sort of the roots of this style and all of Shaolin Kung Fu. So that was Daniel Hernandez from Venezuela performing Luohan Quan, Da Luohan Quan, or big R-hat fist.
Our next competitor, A17 from Venezuela, United States, Luis Mendez, performing a Jingli Tanghua Liu He praying mantis fist form.
下一位是 A17选手，来自委内瑞拉和美国的 Luis Mendez，套路名称敬礼藏花六合螳螂。
So this is Luis Mendez performing a Liu He or 6 harmony praying mantis form. Six harmony praying mantis is one of the younger schools of praying mantis. We've seen the 7-star praying mantis form earlier in the competition. What that means is it's a different lineage, different style that was passed down a different line of masters compared to the 7-star praying mantis. So this is Liu He praying mantis, which means it's 6 harmonies praying mantis. Was Daniel Hernandez, Luis Mendez from Venezuela.
And our last competitor in the male unarmed division, competitor A14 from the United States, Chris Chappell, performing the mother form.
男子拳术组最后一位是 A14选手，来自美国的 Chris Chappell，套路名称大连拳山西螳螂。
Contestant in the male unarmed division, Chris Chappell from the USA, and he will be performing a Shanxi praying mantis Dalian Quan, big continuous form. I think they call it the mother form. And this is another style of praying mantis from Shanxi province in China. so different to the Liu He praying mantis, which we just saw. And this style is considered an internal style. It shares some of its tactics with Xing Yi, but also mimics, to some extent, the movements of a praying mantis and the tactics of a praying mantis in battle. And like we said, it is considered an internal style where movements are, the power is generated through the body's energy rather than just strengthening the muscles through lots of push-ups or physical movements, physical training. It's a more soft, relaxed style where they place emphasis on the body's chi and developing internal power to generate very powerful force. So this is from the Shanxi praying mantis style, which is a different lineage again to the Liu He or the regular 7-star praying mantis that we've seen earlier in the competition. It's an internal style from Shanxi province, China. And that was Chris Chappell performing the mother form, which is the main form of the system.
And our next division, the Southern Fist division, with our first competitor being competitor A017 from Taiwan, Qinzhi Chen, performing the NTD Wing Chun form.
下面进行南方拳术组比赛，第一位上场的是 A017选手，来自台湾的陈进志，透露名称二门踢斗咏春。
So this is Chen Jingzhi from Taiwan, performing a Wing Chun form in the Southern Fist. We have a separate Southern Fist category because Southern styles tend to have smaller stances, be less acrobatic than the Northern styles. So they do deserve their own category because the appearance of these systems is a little bit different. Wing Chun Kung Fu, of course, is the style that Bruce Lee learned from his master, Yip Man, in Hong Kong, before developing his own system. And this was Chen Jingzhi of Taiwan performing a Wing Chun Ermin Tido in the Wing Chun style.
And our next competitor, A44 from the United States, Marcus Leonard, performing the Small Tiger form.
下一位是 A44选手，来自美国的 Marcus Leonard， 透露名称小伏虎拳。
Who is performing a small tiger form. We have an interview with him, which we are going to play for you later, but it was very interesting. He said that his form is a Southern style, but it does have some of the characteristics of the Northern systems as well, so you have to look out for that. Generally, Southern styles are smaller stances, smaller movements, less acrobatic. So this is Marcus Leonard, small tiger form. Southern styles often feature low, stable stances, like the horse stance, which you can see a lot in this form. The tiger style characteristics of the tiger is that it's very aggressive. It uses some punching as well as grabbing techniques, like you can see Marcus performing there. A tiger claw. Marcus said he's currently traveling all over the place learning different styles of Kung Fu. So that was Marcus Leonard performing a small tiger form. And we do have an interview with him that we will play a little bit later on after the Southern Fist division.
Our next competitor, A010 from Canada, Alison Tony Bahia, performing a crane and tiger fist form.
下一位是 A010 选手，来自加拿大的 Alison Tonia Bahia， 套路名称虎鹤拳。
So this is Alison Tony Bahia from Canada, and he is performing a tiger and crane style system. And this is a combination style, so we saw the tiger style shown to us by Marcus Leonard, and this is the tiger and crane, which combines the two styles. So you've got the aggressiveness of the tiger, you can see the grabbing movements, the tiger claw, and also the crane fist, the spear hand, what they call the spear hand of the crane, which is a softer style, although still not really considered a fully internal style. It is a softer form of Kung Fu. You can see we have both punches, tiger claws, the ferociousness of the tiger, and in theory we have the gentleness of the crane. Characteristics of the crane is that it sticks to its opponent. So when an opponent attacks, the crane will block and then stick to their forearm and move around with them, relying on feel rather than sight to tell what their opponent is doing. You can see the crane spear hands there. And like we said, this is the Southern style division, so movements tend to be less acrobatic, less wide and long. In the South, people are used to fighting in smaller environments, such as on board small boats and in towns and markets, rather than larger open plains like you would have in the North. So their Kung Fu styles evolved to be smaller stances, more compact, more short and medium range, whereas the Northern long fist styles tend to be a much more long-range fighting system. And you can see the techniques of the crane really coming out there. Both the spear hands and the crane fist, which looks somewhat similar to the praying mantis fist, with all the fingers meeting the thumb. It's an open fist, and that's the tiger claw there. So that was Alison Tony Bahia from Canada performing a tiger crane combination form.
Our next competitor, A014 from the United States, Eric Kwai, performing a Pubu Tuchi Dragon Form Fist.
下一位是 A014 选手，来自美国的纪守文，套路名称破布吐气龙形。
So this is Eric Kwai from the USA, and he is performing a dragon style form, which, like we told you with the animal styles such as the snake style, tiger crane, we are mimicking the movements of an animal, and this form is mimicking the movements of the myth.
And our last competitor in the Southern Fist Division, competitor A018 from Taiwan, Qi Shen Lin, performing a Hu Di Chuanhua Zhonghe Chuan form.
南方拳术组最后一位是 A018 选手，来自台湾的林奇宪，套路名称蝴蝶穿花纵鹤线。
This concludes our unarmed division. We'll have a short 10-minute break, start again at 11:15 with our weapons division.
拳术组比赛到此结束，我们现在将休息10分钟，11点1刻准时开始，谢谢。
Could you tell us about your style and the form that you did in the competition?
So I practice Shaolin Kung Fu, and the form is Yan Qing Quan. It's like a 燕子, you know, it's like a bird.
Okay.
Like very light, but also very powerful.
Wow, those light but powerful. That sounds cool. Okay,
Yeah.
so and how did you prepare for this competition?
Actually, my shifu told me about this competition, and I'm with this shifu for about 1 year, and I practiced his Shaolin Kung Fu. And he told me about this competition in New York, and he really encouraged me to come here. Yeah.
Cool. And you've already done one round in Taiwan first, and then.
Yes.
And how was it in Taiwan? Was it difficult to come through and get invited to New York? Or?
There were a lot of competitors as well. Yeah.
And what have you learned? Have you learned anything in the process of competing and seeing other competitors and things?
I compete before, but not so many times. Before I just practiced my Kung Fu by myself and in some school, but we didn't really go to the competition. And I started to go to the competition to meet people, and it actually feels really nice. And this competition is different from other competitions in Taiwan that I've been to.
Oh, how is it different?
Like here, there are so many people from all over the world, like in Europe, in US, and like you see all the competitors that are practicing so good, and I don't know, it's so touching to see them practice, like foreigners and they are doing Chinese Kung Fu. Yeah.
That's cool. And what are your hopes for, well, obviously you hope to win, but so hopes for the next stage, but also hopes for the future. How do you want to develop your Kung Fu?
I hope like more people know Chinese Kung Fu. Yeah. Because I think this sport is not in the Olympic Games. And it's very nice to see people know about this martial arts and practice it. And I hope like new generation will learn about this traditional sport as well.
So Chris, tell us about the style of Kung Fu and the form that you're doing today in the competition.
I practice a style called Shanxi 7-star praying mantis. So it's a northern style of praying mantis. So it's a little different from what you might have seen in the old Hong Kong Kung Fu movies, which was a southern style of mantis where you see a lot of
like thundering mantis.
Exactly.
My favorite. Yeah.
Favorite? 36 Chambers for me, hands down.
Well, my favorite mantis movie.
Okay. That was pretty good.
Yeah. And what about the form, the specific form that you're doing today in the competition?
Well, the form I did today was called the mother form. It's called that because it's sort of the origin of all of the different techniques in the system. And forms are very interesting. Like they're not, people sometimes say, oh, they're not practical, but they're not really meant to be practical. They're sort of like a living encyclopedia of movements for a culture that was largely illiterate. A lot of people practicing, couldn't read books, so you needed some kind of physical thing that had all of the movements.
That's interesting. Cool. And what do you feel you've learned in the process of, coming and competing in this competition? Are there any insights that you've gained?
Can I expand that to just being about martial arts in general?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think the biggest lesson I've learned from particularly Chinese style, traditional martial arts, is they have a saying in ancient China, the soft overcomes the hard. I think you've probably heard of it. And I think a lot of times in life we learn that anger or rage, those are, a type of strength that we can use to get through hard times, but it's a very dangerous emotion because then that can turn on people closest to you, family, friends. But in Chinese martial arts, you learn that strength can come through tranquility and peace, and that's a much bigger, broader form of strength that can really serve you in all aspects of your life.
Nice, and it's only really the traditional arts that have that, isn't it? Because MMA and stuff, you don't really get the same thing.
They don't talk about it that much, but in MMA, sometimes people are taking drugs to make them more aggressive, so they can come. And it's powerful. It works, but it's only goes so far before, anger. It's really like a fire, and eventually it'll burn you out.
Yeah, so that's a big lesson. And have you learned anything from the other contestants you've met in the process of competing?
These competitions are always humbling. They really just expose all of your shortcomings very, very publicly. But everyone is so great, and it really becomes like a little family. There's not that sense of competition. It is a competition, but we all want to see each other do well, to be built up.
The learning process together, I guess.
Yeah.
And what are your hopes for the future in developing, practicing Kung Fu? And
I just hope I can keep practicing, keep moving forward, and really make it Kung Fu someday.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Chris. That's awesome.
Pleasure.
Can you tell us about your style of Kung Fu and also about the form you did in the competition?
Of course. I do Shaolin Kung Fu. I'm a 32nd generation disciple from Shaolin, from my teacher. My teacher was a 31st generation disciple from Shaolin, and I was doing a Shaolin small fire staff, or a Shao Hui Guan.
Cool. And maybe, can you tell us about the significance of the staff? Because I know it's the weapon a lot of people learn first, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a weapon you learn first, but particular for Shaolin, it's considered the grandfather of all weapons because like you said, you learn it first. But in Shaolin too, they don't kill is the idea. So the Shaolin weapon is always considered a staff because it's one of those movements that if you hit somebody, you don't kill them. You hurt them.
Yeah.
To stop them, to uphold justice is what my Shifu would say.
Okay.
So that's one of the Shaolin traditional forms.
Oh, cool. That's really interesting. And what are kind of the features of using a staff, type of attacks?
For Shaolin, there's a lot of swirling motions, a lot of striking with the staff. There are movements that are where you're hitting with the tip of the staff and then the butt of the staff. Okay. There's stabbing movements like spear. Sometimes you'll swing it like a broadsword, so it has movements where you're using the other arm to block. It has short range, long range. And then there's other staff styles. For instance, there's like monkey staff, the mimicry stuff, drunken staff. So there's a lot of versatility with the Shaolin staff in particular, or staff in general.
Cool. Oh, that's really interesting. And so, in joining this competition, and is there anything that you've learned or any memorable experiences that you've had?
Well, I've been doing martial arts for about 30 years. And it's always something new whenever you go to a tournament. This tournament I really enjoyed. I actually stopped doing tournaments for a long time because I used to fight, is what it is. I fought in China, I fought in Thailand, and I was focusing more on that. And I used to do a lot of tournaments for forms. Yeah. And I kind of came out of retirement for the last tournament here in 2019, just to try it out and see how it was. And it was more of an experiment than anything. Yeah. And I missed it, I missed going out and performing and competing. And this tournament I liked because it really wasn't necessarily a competition. It's more like a cultural exchange of your style. You're performing your style. So when I go out there to perform here or compete here, I feel like I'm presenting my generation of Shaolin. So that's why it's kind of, I have a little bit more passionate with it. And the people here are great. They're come from all over the place, South America, China, Taiwan. And everybody has a good family energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And that's what we intend it to be as well.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
Thank you very much. So Megan, would you like to give us a little introduction? What is the style that you do and also the form and this weapon that you just did up there?
I study Shaolin Kung Fu, and today I performed a spear form called Twisting Spear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And tell us a little bit about the spear, because I know you said like king of the weapons. Like what? Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So spear is considered king of the weapons because it's a little longer than a staff. You can, in theory, you can beat any weapon with a spear because you have the reach, right? Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is with spear, there's a certain number of days that they say to master each weapon that you need, and spear is one of the most difficult to master. So I'm still working on it. Yeah, it takes the longest. I think straight sword maybe is the second longest. They say, an old rule of thumb, they say, 1,000 days for maybe staff to studying every day to master it. And straight sword maybe 10,000 days. Wow. And spear, I don't know, something more than that.
More than
I don't remember. I'm still working on mastering it. I haven't done that yet.
That's awesome. And so in joining this competition and, performing your form and stuff, is there anything you've learned or any experiences that have been memorable?
It's definitely a learning experience for me. For some reason, I always get a little nervous, even though I've been studying actually for a little more than 15 years, and my school performs demos, kung fu demos all the time, but whenever I compete, I want it to be so perfect that I just make myself so nervous. So every time I do a competition like this, it's a good experience for me to just overcome my fears that way. So.
And have there been like any other contestants, people of different styles that you've had a conversation with or learned something from?
Oh yeah, when I was younger, I did a lot of competitions all over the U.S. And we found this competition back in 2019. This is our second time coming, and it's just one of the best competitions we've been to because of that, we meet so many people. It's a truly international competition, and we meet so many people that are just here to be friends and share and encourage each other. And it's not like, doesn't feel like, oh, we're all competing against each other. It feels like we're all working for the same goal. So we've seen a few others school like Shaolin schools, which is cool to see someone doing the same, maybe almost the same form as you, maybe a little different. All the teams are really good. The team from Taiwan and the teams from South America, they all do something a little bit different, and it's really cool to see and talk to them, and yeah, everything. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, and I
Yeah.
wish you good luck. I hope
Thank
you make
you.
it through till tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to restart with our junior weapons category.
欢迎回来，现在少年器械组比赛开始。
Our first competitor in the junior weapons division is competitor C12 from the United States, Obi Ume, performing the Fei Long Staff form.
少年器械组第一位选手是 C12选手，来自美国的 Obi Ume， 套路名称飞龙棍。
So this is Obi Uma from the United States with the Fei Long Staff, or Flying Dragon Staff. And in the martial arts, the staff is generally the first weapon that one would learn when they embark on weapons training. However, the staff can still be taken to a very high level. Just because it's learned first doesn't mean it's only basic moves. The Shaolin martial arts, the monks consider the staff a sort of compassionate weapon, because monks, they aim to not kill. So the staff is a weapon that you can give someone a good hiding with, but not actually inflict, lethal wounds, such as a sword or broadsword or other type of slashing, stabbing weapon. So the staff is often associated with Shaolin monks and Shaolin Kung Fu. This is the Flying Dragon Staff form. That was Obi Ume from the United States with Fei Long Huang, Flying Dragon Staff.
Our next competitor, C32 from Taiwan, Min Chen Hu, performing the Hook Swords form.
下一位是 C32选手，来自台湾的胡敏珍，套路名称护手双钩。
So we now have Hu Minchen from Taiwan, and she is going to be performing the Husho Shuanggo, or hooking swords. These are definitely not a basic weapon at all. So this is a traditional Chinese weapon. It's often associated with the northern styles and also with wushu weapons routines, which are the type of performance routines in China, and to some extent with southern styles as well. This weapon supposedly dates from at least as far back as the Song Dynasty, but perhaps even further back to the Warring States period. And that was Hu Minchen with hook swords.
Next competitor is C31 from Taiwan, Bo Cheng, performing a dragon form sword.
下一位是 C31选手，来自台湾的钟博泽，套路名称龙形剑。
We now have Zhong Bozi from Taiwan, who is performing a dragon straight sword form. The straight sword is one of the hardest weapons to master, probably the hardest weapon in Chinese martial arts. Most elegant. And you'll see it in styles such as Wudang Kung Fu, as portrayed in the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is probably the most famous example of the straight sword in Chinese Kung Fu movies. The Green Destiny sword, which is what that sword was called. Characteristic of sword forms is you use the sword with one hand and two fingers with the other hand, and that hand kind of mimics the movements of your sword hand as well. Like we said, the straight sword is one of the most advanced Chinese weapons, so typically you start by learning staff weapons routines, then move to the broadsword, and then eventually the straight sword. It requires most control and the longest time to master. So that was Zhong Bozi from Taiwan with a dragon straight sword routine.
Our next competitor is C11 from China, Wan Li Tang, performing a Bhagwa broadsword form.
下一位是 C11选手，来自中国的唐万里，套路名称八卦刀。
So this is Tang Wanli from China, and he's doing a Bhagwa broadsword form. So this is the broadsword, which is a curved sword. In Chinese it's called dao, or actually just translates as knife, but in English it's normally called broadsword. And this is actually a broadsword routine from Bhagwa, which is a Taoist martial art. We saw one contestant practicing a Bhagwa form earlier. Bhagwa has the characteristic circle walking. So if you look closely, you will see the circle walking techniques in this form. I've already seen a couple of instances of it. There we go. Bhagwa footwork, you can observe there. Walking in a circle, always changing direction, which is one of the characteristics of Bhagwa Zhang, Bhagwa palm. But of course, it's not just palms. Bhagwa has weapon routines as well, of which this is one, the Bhagwa broadsword routine. And you can see that circle walking, Bhagwa footwork in action. Bhagwa is an internal style of Taoist Kung Fu, which relies more on internal energy and relaxation to develop power. It's one of the three main internal arts of Bhagwa, Xingyi, and Taiji. And this was a sword form, broadsword form within the Bhagwa system. That's Tang Wanli from China.
Our next competitor is C23 from Canada, Ian Lee, performing a Shaolin double butterfly sword form.
下一位是 C23选手，来自加拿大的李奇峰，套路名称少林蝴蝶双刀。
So this is Ian Lee from Canada, and he is going to be performing Shaolin double butterfly swords. The butterfly sword, as you'll see, it is a short knife type sword. In Chinese it's still called dao, which actually translates as knife. 蝴蝶刀, 蝴蝶双刀, butterfly double swords or double knives. So don't confuse that with the jian in Chinese, or straight sword, which is what we saw 2 contestants ago. With any double sword or knife in martial arts, you do have to be careful of cutting off your own arm with one of the swords. So you'll see that they often move in unison to avoid that, but still it is one of the more dangerous types of weapons to practice, just because of that risk of actually cutting your other arm with the other sword, with the other hand's sword. So definitely not a basic weapon. Typically you start with the staff in weapons training and then work your way up through broadsword, and then up to spear, straight sword, and then also double-handed weapons like we saw with the double-handed hook knives and these butterfly knives. With Shaolin double butterfly swords, butterfly knives.
Our next competitor, C33 from the Czech Republic, Carol Korenk, performing the Jinshan Staff form.
下一位是 C33 选手，来自捷克的 Carol Korenk， 套路名称镇山棍。
So this is Carol Korenk. She is from the Czech Republic, and she is performing the Jinshan staff form. Like we said, the staff is typically the first weapon that you learn. Shaolin monks consider it to be a compassionate weapon because it is possible not to inflict deadly injuries with a staff. You can just use it to teach someone a good lesson rather than kill them. So staffs are often associated with the Shaolin temple, and it is the first weapon that the monks learn before progressing to broadswords, straight swords, spears, etc. However, that doesn't mean that it's forever just a basic weapon. The staff does have a variety of complex techniques that you can see in this form. So that was Carol Korenk with the Jinshan staff. She's from the Czech Republic.
Our next competitor, C30 from Taiwan, Shengqi Lin, performing the Chunqiu Da Dao form.
下一位是 C30 选手，来自台湾的林胜奇，套路名称春秋大刀。
So this is Lin Shengji from Taiwan, performing the Chunqiu Da Dao, or the Spring and Autumn Big Knife. So this knife consists of a big blade, a dao, similar to the broadsword, but on the end of a staff. And you can see that there are often notches on the top of the blade that can be used for trapping an opponent's weapon. And again, this is not a basic weapon, it's something you progress to after learning the staff, maybe the broadsword, and then the Dao. So that was Lin Shengji with the Spring and Autumn Big Knife form. He is all the way from Taiwan.
And our last competitor in the junior weapons division, competitor C25 from Taiwan, Wan Yu Sun, performing a Yexing broadsword form.
少年器械组最后一位是 C25 选手，来自台湾的孙万玉，套路名称夜行刀。
So we have Sun Wanyu, also from Taiwan, demonstrating the Yexing Dao or Yexing broadsword form. So this is one of the weapons you would typically learn after the staff. You would progress onto the broadsword. And in Chinese it's called Dao or knife, and it is a sword that it's sharp on only one side, so you can safely touch the top of it to your body. You'll notice a lot of the moves require pulling the sword from around one's back. That is obviously the non-sharp side. And the broadsword, it's more of a slashing weapon rather than a stabbing weapon, whereas the straight sword has a lot of stabbing movements. This sword primary technique is mostly slashing rather than actually stabbing it through, although you will occasionally see some stabbing movements in the forms, but primarily it is for slashing. So the broadsword makes up the 4 traditional weapons, which kind of form the basis of Kung Fu weapons training, which would be the staff, the spear, the broadsword, and the straight sword. In Chinese, the name is Dao, and they often refer to it as the general of weapons. So that is Sun Wanyu from Taiwan with the Yexing broadsword form. And that concludes the male weapons division. Next, we will have the female weapons division.
We'll now move forward with our female weapons division with our first competitor, B20 from Taiwan, Shi Huang, performing the Bai Hong sword form.
下面进行女子器械组比赛，第一位上场的是 B20 选手，来自台湾的黄淑珍，套路名称白红剑。
So this is Huang Shuzhen from Taiwan performing a Bai Hong Jian or Bai Hong straight sword form. The straight sword is one of the 4 classic weapons in Chinese Kung Fu. It is a double-edged weapon, and it has a history of at least 2,500 years in China. There are sources that mention straight swords as far back as 7th century BC during the spring and autumn period. And the straight sword was, of course, made famous by the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or made famous in the West, I should say, by the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where it was wielded by the warrior Li Mu Bai, the Green Destiny sword. There are both double-handed versions and single-handed versions of the Chinese jian, or straight sword. This is obviously a single-handed version. The single-handed versions are shorter, measuring up to 31 inches. And then you have the double-handed versions, which are a lot longer and also heavier. And the straight sword is considered the hardest weapon to master in Chinese Kung Fu after the spear. So, like we've been saying, typically one starts by learning the staff, which is the entry weapon into the world of Chinese Kung Fu weapons training. And then we'll learn the broadsword, move up through the spear, and then eventually, if they choose to, learn the straight sword, which is considered the hardest to master. So that was Huang Shujian from
Our
Taiwan.
next competitor, B17, from the United States, Muriel Johnson, performing the 36 form short staff.
下一位是 B17选手，来自美国的 Muriel Johnson， 套路名称36式螳螂边杆。
So this is Muriel Johnson from the USA, and she is practicing the 36 movement Tanglang Bianga, which is a short staff. Can often be translated as a whipping stick. It's a little bit flexible, has a whipping motion, and this is a Tanglang or praying mantis system form for the staff, the short staff whipping stick. So in part still mimics the tactics of a praying mantis whilst using a weapon. These kind of sticks were common in China about 100 years ago, especially when other weapons were banned in China. There was a period of time during the late Qing dynasty, weapons were banned, and many people would practice their weapons forms with a staff like this, because you could just have a stick lying around. It looked like a walking stick. Nothing to see here, no weapons here when the army knocked at your door. So that is the 36 form praying mantis bianga, or whipping stick, short staff. And that was Muriel Johnson from the USA.
Our next competitor, B14, from the United States, Megan Westerman, performing the Shaolin twisting spear form.
女子器械组最后一位选手是 B14选手，来自美国的 Megan Westerman， 套路名称少林枪。
And next we have Megan Westerman from Florida, USA. And she is showing us the Shaolin twisting spear. Now, if you were watching us earlier, you would have seen the interview with Megan, where she talked about the spear, which is often called the king of the weapons. And it can be used as both a long-range, mid-range, and short-range weapon, just because of how long it is and the fact that you can choose to hold it right at the end, or halfway up, or right near the blade. And so, in theory, you can beat all the other weapons with the spear, though, of course, that depends on the ability of the two practitioners who are in combat. The spear is the hardest to master after the straight sword. So in theory, they say it takes about 6,500 days to master the spear and 10,000 days to master the straight sword. And if you're wondering about the tassel on the end of the spear, this has a few functions. One, it can startle the enemy or disorient the enemy, but also it's used to show status. For example, a spear with a red tassel would show an elite troop status. And from the function of startling the enemy, it kind of blurs their vision, makes it unclear where the point of the spear actually is, because you've got a tassel flying around near the tip of the spear as well. So it makes it a little bit hard to actually tell where the tassel is. And there's another more sinister purpose for it, that is to stop blood flowing from the blade all the way down the shaft that's absorbed by the tassel. So that was Megan Westerman from the USA. And that concludes the female weapons division. And next up, we will have the final division of today's final, which is the male.
And now moving on
weapons
to our
division.
male weapons division with our first competitor, number 819 from the United States, Jorge Perez, performing a Liu He staff form.
下面进行男子器械组比赛，第一位上场的是 A19选手，来自美国的 Jorge Perez， 套路名称六合棍。
So this is Jorge Perez performing the Liu He staff. And like we said, the staff is typically the weapon that you learn first. It's one of the four most important weapons in Chinese Kung Fu: the staff, the broadsword, the spear, and the straight sword. And the staff is known as the grandfather of all weapons. In popular culture, staffs have been depicted in many kung fu movies, including Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the famous Kung Fu Hustle movie, and also the recent Shang-Chi Legend of the Ten Rings. Many warriors using staffs in that movie. And the staff, like we mentioned, it is often called the grandfather of all weapons. The Shaolin monks see it as a compassionate weapon because you do not have to inflict deadly wounds on someone. You can just use it to teach them a good lesson and get rid of them. And that was Jorge Perez of the USA with his Liu He Gun, or Liu He staff form.
Our next competitor, 839 from Taiwan, Xiaoxian Chen, performing the crescent shovel form.
下一位是 A39选手，来自台湾的陈少轩，套路名称月牙铲。
This is Chen Xiaoshuan from Taiwan with the crescent shovel. And this is not a weapon that we see very often in Kung Fu. It's not one of the four classic weapons. It's a lot more rare, a lot more specialized. You can see the moon-shaped crescent at the end of it, and the other end is a shovel-type blade. The shovel is also sometimes called a Shaolin spade or a monk's blade. And so it consists of a long pole with a shovel on one end and a crescent on the other end. And the shovel serves different purposes. It is a weapon, but due to its having a shovel, if the monks came across a corpse on the road, they could actually bury it with proper Buddhist rites using the shovel. And this is a weapon that Buddhist monks would thus often carry while they were traveling in ancient China. And the crescent was actually designed for fending off small and medium-sized animals. So that was Chen Xiaoxuan with the crescent shovel, and he has come all the way from Taiwan.
And our next competitor, 823 from the United States, Anthony Casella, performing the Fengmo staff form.
下一位是 A23选手，来自美国的 Anthony Casella， 套路名称风魔棍。
So here we have Anthony Casella with another staff form. Like we said, the staff It's referred to as the grandfather of all weapons. It is one of the 4 most important weapons in Chinese Kung Fu, which include the staff, the broadsword, the spear, and the straight sword. So in Chinese Kung Fu, there are different lengths of staff. You have the Changgun, the gun, which is the length about as high as a person, which is I think what he's using here, and then also a shorter staff as well, like we saw. So that was Anthony Casella with Fei Long Staff.
And our next competitor, 820 from the United States, Mario Salazar, performing the Shaolin Staff form.
下一位是 A20 选手，来自美国的 Muriel Salazar， 套路名称少林棍。
This is Muriel Salazar from Florida, USA, with a Shaolin staff form. And like we said, Shaolin Kung Fu and Shaolin monks are associated heavily with the staff. It is their weapon of choice due to it being non-lethal in many situations. Because monks obviously try their best not to kill or harm innocent life. Staffs are also seen in contemporary wushu, and it's one of the 4 main weapons that were featured at the first World Wushu Championships due to the popularity of the staff. However, this is the staff or gun being seen in a traditional kung fu form, not a modern contemporary wushu form. The staff, called the grandfather of all weapons, is one of the 4 main weapons of Chinese kung fu: the staff, the spear, the broadsword, and the straight sword. And associated with Shaolin monks. That is Mario Salazar from Florida, USA, performing a Shaolin staff or Shaolin gun routine.
And our next competitor, A11 from China, Guo Long Huang, performing a praying mantis 2-handed sword form.
下一位是 A11选手，来自中国的王国龙，套路名称达摩剑、螳螂双手剑。
This is Wang Guolong from China, and he is performing a routine called Damo Jian, which is actually a praying mantis double-handed straight sword routine. So you can see we saw the single-handed straight sword earlier, but this straight sword is a lot longer, and many of the movements he actually uses both hands to wield the sword, because it is longer and heavier than the single-handed version. The straight sword, of course, is one of the, well, it's considered the hardest weapon of the 4 classic Chinese weapons to master after the spear. So in terms of difficulty, it goes from the staff through the broadsword, then to the spear, and then to the straight sword. Obviously, to achieve a high level in any of these weapons requires years of training anyway. So don't think the spear, the staff is easy. So that was Guo Long with a praying mantis two-handed straight sword routine.
And our next competitor, A16 from the United States, Michael Hoff, performing a Shang Shou Qian form.
下一位是 A16选手，来自美国的 Michael Hoff， 套路名称双手剑。
So we have Michael Hoff from the USA, and this is also a double-handed straight sword. Two in a row, and you can see that there's a lot more double-handed technique in this form. The previous contestant was switching back and forth between double-handed and single-handed technique. This is more of a dedicated double-handed form. And the double-handed straight sword is typically longer and heavier than the single-handed version. So that was Michael Hoff with a double-handed straight sword form. He's from right here in the USA.
And our next competitor, A26 from the United States, Stanley Meng, performed the Hungar Tiger Tail Double Whip Chain form.
下一位是 A26选手，来自美国的孟威龙，套路名称洪家虎尾双边。
So we have Stanley Meng from the USA with a Hungar Tiger Tail double whip chain. So Hungar or Hongjia Quan in Mandarin, it's a southern style of Kung Fu. And this is a form with double whip chains. So the whip chain is a flexible weapon, as you can see. It is considered quite an advanced weapon to wield, and even to wield a single whip chain is actually pretty difficult, but this is double whip chains of the Hongjia system, or Hungar system, southern Kung Fu style. And this is one of the classic moves of whip chain forms, which it needs a lot of core strength to be able to keep bouncing and have the chain go under you. One of the biggest mistakes that people make in these forms is dropping the chain, which is easy to do. Or in the double whip chain, it's easy to get the two chains entangled in each other. So very impressive form indeed. So that was Stanley Meng with a Hungar Tiger Tail double whip chain form.
And our next competitor, A30 from Colombia, Mauricio Pinzan, performed the Praying Mantis 7-star straight sword form.
下一位是 A30选手，来自哥伦比亚的 Mauricio Pinzan， 套路名称七星连环剑。
So our next contestant is Mauricio Pinzon with a 7-star Praying Mantis straight sword form. So this is the Shanxi style 7-star Praying Mantis. It is the same system that we saw contestant Chris Chappell performing earlier in the competition with open-handed form. It is considered a soft internal style of Praying Mantis. And this is the weapon form, the straight sword weapon form from within that system. Straight sword, of course, is referred to often as the gentleman of Chinese weapons. It is one of the four classic and most important weapons of Chinese Kung Fu: the staff, the broadsword, the spear, and the straight sword. And is considered most probably the hardest weapon to master, the most graceful, and that requires the longest period of time, of effort in practicing to become a master of. They say 10,000 days. And you can see the straight sword, it is double-sided. It has both slashing and stabbing movements. And you can see the characteristic two fingers on the other hand, which is what is typically done during sword forms with the straight sword. Kind of mimics the movements in some moves, like you saw just there, mimicking the movement of the sword, and also balancing out with the other hand, balancing the weight. So that was Mauricio Pinzon with a 7-star praying mantis continuous sword form, straight sword form.
And our last competitor in our male weapons division, competitor 840 from Taiwan, Chang Gung Chen, performed the Fei Long Dao form.
男子器械组最后一位选手是 A40 选手，来自台湾的陈长庚，套路名称飞龙大刀。
So we have Chen Changken from Taiwan. And he is performing the Fei Long Dao, Flying Dragon Big Knife, which we've seen this weapon once before in the competition. It is a knife similar to a broadsword, stuck on the end of a staff. And as you can see, it has a bit of red fabric flying around on the knife, which kind of startles the enemy and confuses the enemy as to where the blade is. You can also see there is some serrated edge on the back of the knife, which can be used to trap enemies' weapons, such as swords, spears, other large knives, broadswords, etc. In some variations, this is referred to as the horse-cutting knife, because it can be used to attack large animals, such as a horse. So this is Chen Changkeng performing Fei Long Dao, Flying Dragon Big Knife. He is with us all the way from Taiwan. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the contestants in the finals of the 7th NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition. And that is it for the coverage from today. If you want to know which martial artist has won the big prize, the gold, silver, and bronze medals, you can check out the website martialarts.ntdtv.com. The prize ceremony will also be live streamed on our website and on YouTube, but we will be returning to regular coverage now on the channel. So this is it from us. Thank you very much for watching the 7th International NTD Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition. I've been your host, Ben Hedges, and a big thank you for watching. That's all from us.